Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of NCBIO, Neil and myself, as co-chairs of the DEI Forum, we welcome you to another get-together to talk about issues related to DEI and our biotech industry. Today, we're going to be talking about the rise and fall of employee-led groups. And I don't know about you, but DEI is now ever present in the media. I swear I hear about it, whether it's up, down, sideways, left or right, it's everywhere now that we've got the new ruling from the Supreme Court around affirmative action. And I think today's conversation will continue to engage you on the topic of employee-led groups and DEI, the DEI journey of your company. So we look forward to having a really robust conversation today. Brenda, did you want me to go through the agenda? Okay, first we will have breakout sessions and then closing remarks from Neil Jones. Please be sure to mute your microphones unless you have a question. And as you know, this is being recorded. Breakout sessions are not, so feel free to be as vulnerable and transparent as you would like. And any questions or comments, you can feel free to put those in the chat window. We are now in September, and we just want to recognize September 15th to October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month. So the first discussion group will be led by Josh Jones as our moderator. He's the Director of Sales and Business Development for Frankel Staffing. And then Ellen King is the Micro Lab Group Leader and DEI Manager for Novozymes. And then our Jamie Osterhout, the Chief Experience Officer for the Diversity Movement, will also be part of our discussion group. So without further ado, Josh, do you want to take over?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Right on. All right. Well, thank you all for being here with us today. It's obviously a fantastic topic to cover, and we've got some great panelists here. As we're going to cover ERGs or BRGs, which, business resource groups or whatever your organization calls them or wants to call them. I wanted to just kind of tee this off with everybody keeping in mind that these can cover a number of DEI areas. So neurodiversity, ethnicity, religion, gender, disabilities, generational differences. There's a lot here. And so as we're talking about these groups, make sure that you've got your mind spanning all the different ways and that you could build and support these programs. So, but first we will turn it over to the panelists and have them introduce themselves and kind of tee up, their experience with ERGs or BRGs in their space. So Jamie, we'll start with you.
Great. Thanks so much, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here. As Shayla said, my name is Jamie Osterhout. I am the Chief Experience Officer at the Diversity Movement. I use she, her pronouns. And at the Diversity Movement, we work with a number of different organizations throughout various industries, including in the biotech space. And a lot of those organizations are either starting up employee resource groups or business resource groups, or Josh, as you said, it can be kind of an alphabet soup of all sorts of different names that they call these different groups. But some are starting them. Some maybe started them many years ago. Some maybe started them in 2020 and they're trying to revitalize them. So organizations are at very different journeys with where they're at in terms of using employee resource groups. But they really can, if they're set up correctly and with really good governance in place, they can be such a great way to increase belonging, increase feelings of inclusion at your organization. But it's just really key to get those set up. So that's what we do at the Diversity Movement, is help our clients set up these and sustain these employee resource groups.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. Looking forward to hearing from you and your expertise. And next, Ellen, we'll go to you.
Hi, my name is Ellen King, and I work at Novozymes in Franklinton. I've been here for 26 years, and I am the microbiology lab group leader, and recently I took the position of the DE&I manager after our previous DE&I manager passed away in December of last year, Richard Stallings. And it was an honor to take that. But I joined the diversity program that we have here when he first asked. He asked a question like, would I lead the African American Cultural Resource Group? And I did for a number of reasons, because our company joined the DE&I journey, I guess, fairly late in the game compared to a lot of the other companies that are out there. We started the journey in 2020, and we've been building on it ever since with 4 resource groups, but we call ours ZRGs, because our Novozymes employees are considered Zymers. And so our resource groups are Zymer resource groups for ZRG. And we currently have 4. We have the Women's Initiative Group, the African American Cultural Resource Group. We have LGBTQ plus, and then we also have one for Latino and Heritage, Latino and Hispanic Heritage Network.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellen. So, Ellen, we'll kind of keep it with you. I know you said that you all were late in the game starting your journey, but you're here now. 2020 was 3 years ago, so you've got 4 groups under the belt. Could you talk to us a little bit about what you've seen that has worked, and then other things that might not have worked?
The things that I've seen that have worked have been mostly the engagement activities, things that we have for celebration months. Because we all know that people like to eat, they like to celebrate, they like free handouts, they like when you give them things. And so, one thing that we've learned is that when we celebrate, we also throw a little bit of training in there as well. So, for example, for our African American Culture Resource Group, when we have Black History Month in February, we like to bring a little bit of the culture into the mix. So we'll have the food, the flavors, the sights and sounds of the culture. So we'll do some training where we'll teach about maybe music, or we'll teach about famous inventors, or we'll teach about African American singers, and we'll bring in a band to play live music. And we'll have food trucks, or we'll have catered lunches to all of our 13 sites. We have 13 sites in the region. So we'll pick the 13 sites, the sites that have the most employees, because some of them are remote that might just be 2. So we'll invite them to have lunch on us. But for that lunch, if it's catered or if it's food trucks, it has to be Black business owned, and it has to be something from the African American culture, whether it's Haitian, whether it's Jamaican, whether it's just soul food, whatever it is. So what we'll do is we'll send food to those sites, and for the local site in Franklinton, we'll bring food. And the employees have time to connect over food. They have time to learn about some of the flavors. We'll have some of the music from the African American culture play, like it might be Motown, or it might be blues, or it might be some jazz. We'll put famous quotes up on the screen from African American leaders for people that you may not have even known that they were part of the culture. We'll put them in for also, because we have sites in Canada, we'll also have quotes or sayings from Canadians. And those are the things that we found at work, because as long as people feel like they're engaged, they don't mind learning. But we've also found that people sometimes, their hesitation comes with fear, because they're afraid that, a lot of times we're afraid of things that we don't know, or we're afraid of people that we don't know anything about. We get afraid because of things that we may have heard, or things that our own unconscious biases that we're unaware of. So what we do is, one way you get to know people is you get to know them by sitting down and eating with them. You get to know them by listening to music. Music brings people together. Whether it's a beat, whether it's like clapping your hands or nodding your head, it brings people together. So we found that if we use those things, we can throw in a little bit of the teaching at the same time. So when we do that, we actually have some trivia, or we'll have some talks, or we'll have some trainings around the culture. The things that we found that haven't worked are kind of like, people get a little tired of always seeing flyers in their faces, or getting a lot of emails, inviting them to things, or getting a lot of trainings. Oh, here, a lot of times we hear, oh, here we go again, another training. So a lot of times we found that if we just put it out there like that, it doesn't seem to work as well. So that's why we've tried to cater a little bit of like putting both of them together, the sandwich method. You put some good in, you put training in, and then you sandwich it again with something nice on the outside. And then they don't mind the middle part so much as if they get the two good pieces of bread, then they don't mind the middle part. So that's what we try to do here. But it's usually the things that seem to take a lot of classroom time and a lot of time out of their workday that just don't seem to work well.
I love that. I hope everybody that's in attendance today had a pen and was writing that stuff down or typing away, because those were some big insights shared right there. I also want to make the connection that it was shown on a slide a few minutes ago. It is Hispanic Heritage Month coming up. So pair what Ellen just said with Hispanic Heritage Month coming up, and I think you've got yourself a place to start if you came to this session today and didn't know where to start. So thank you, Ellen, for that. So Jamie, we'll go to you. What have you seen with some of your clients? What has worked for them? What have been the successes? And then what have been the things that just didn't?
Yeah, absolutely. And Ellen, I was writing that down, Josh, as you mentioned, but I think you said something really important, which is if people are engaged, they don't mind learning, and that people become fearful about DEI. Shayla said this at the beginning. We're seeing it in the media. We're seeing all of this, but at the end of the day, it's about bringing people together to feel that they are included and to feel that they belong. And so if you can do that in a way that's fun, but then you also get some of that learning, I think it's just fantastic. So similar to what Ellen said, we've seen a lot of our clients have very similar successes in terms of planning different events around certain heritage months or certain celebrations. So certainly that's a big win for the employee resource groups. And really one thing that we hear again and again is it's a really helpful tool for recruiting. So we've heard from many of our clients that they'll look at a company's website as they're applying and they'll say, wow, they have an LGBTQ plus employee resource group. I feel like I'm seen there. And so they'll actually apply for the job because they see those employee resource groups. So even just promoting the fact that you have these employee resource groups on your website is an easy way to do that and make sure that they're involved in that recruiting process as well as onboarding. So a lot of our clients will have, when they have new employees, they'll do just a quick, it depends on the cadence for the different organizations, but hey, did you know we have this employee resource group? Here's how you can be involved. So really getting those employees, before they're even in the door to when they first get there has been a huge success as well. I could go on and on about successes, but some of the pitfalls, we'll call them, can sometimes be where employee resource groups, they are very passionate usually. If people want to join these things, they're voluntary. And so if people want to join these things, it's usually because they're very passionate about something, and that is great, but they may not understand how that works in the context of the organization, how they can push change forward. That's why it's really, really important for employee resource groups to be partnered with that DEI office, that DEI leader, HR leader, even with communications and marketing, so that there's a liaison between these different groups to push things forward. It's very hard for a group that doesn't have that connection to be able to do that. Similarly, it's really important to have an executive sponsor. And that's not someone who's leading the employee resource group, but that's someone who can really provide the oversight and the strategic vision from that leadership team to that group. And also they can champion the group as well. So when they're in those leadership meetings, they can say, hey, I'm the executive sponsor of this employee resource group, and these are the amazing events they have coming up. We want you to come and join us. So that's another important point. So again, that connection to the overarching DEI strategy, office, leader, whatever the case may be, is really, really, really critical, but also educating those employee resource groups. Again, if you're part of the Black and African American employee resource group, you may identify as that, but you may not know a whole lot about LGBTQ plus. And so how can you provide those moments of connection and learning so that if you have multiple, like you were saying, Ellen, you have 4, if you have multiple ERGs or ZRGs in your case, how can you make sure that they're talking to each other? So we actually have one client that will do an annual summit for their ERGs, where they'll get all their ERG folks together to share best practices, to share what they're learning with one another. And so that's really, really important too, because you don't want the ERGs kind of competing against each other. You want them working together. So those are just a few things that I wanted to share.
No, I think that's great, Jamie. And I think one of the things that we're getting to here is allyship. And I do want to get to that in a few minutes. But I don't want to skip over what you were just talking about, because it was my second question and you kind of just took it from me like you were in my head. And Ellen, definitely chime in here. How are you all connecting these different groups together, right? So that's the important piece, is that we didn't just create a group and then they went and they're on an island on their own and they're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, with everyone, but then the rest of the time, everything else is back on the island. What are some ways that this group is intertwined into the business? Shed some light on us there if you can.
Yeah, so I'm happy to start, and then Ellen would love to hear your perspective from Novozymes. But it's exactly that. It's however, and every organization is different. So maybe DEI lives within, your HR function. Maybe it has its own office. Maybe you have a DEI manager like Ellen is. But making sure that someone is tapped in and kind of stewarding, I would say, those employee resource groups. To be able to make sure that, they're not off in a silo and that they are working together, and to find those connection points. So again, some clients will do just a quarterly checkpoint with each of the ERG leaders from all the different groups, just to make sure everyone's sharing and on track. So those are just a couple of things I'd say. But Ellen, I'm going to pass to you.
That is one of the things, like you said, Jamie, that we do is Richard had started it before he passed, and then we picked it up, was we do bring all of the heads of the resource groups together to talk about things, events they may have going on that they might need to support from each other with. When it comes down to LGBTQ plus month, we may share like just some screenshots and different things of famous African Americans that belong to the community, or we may for Hispanic and Latinos that belong to the community, just to kind of show people, because that is one question that we did have from our Zomers, we call them Zomers, was how can it be DE&I if all of the groups have their own group? So aren't you, instead of bringing the inclusion piece in, you're actually segregating out the groups by forming an African American network. You're forming a women's network. You're forming an LGBTQ plus network. Aren't you kind of like defeating the purpose of DE&I altogether? So one thing that we had to show the people that we weren't siloed, that the groups are working together, is all of the leaders do try to come together at major events to show their support to the other leaders. And we do try to encourage each other to be allies of all the other groups. So that's just one way we try to counter it.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's talk about that word, allies. So allyship, Jamie, you mentioned stewardship. The groups that are, or the individuals that may not identify in that group but still support, right? So to me, when I think about allyship, I always talk about it, and everyone can frame it differently. For me, I always say there's 3 A's. There's awareness that there are differences. There's acceptance that there's some inequalities there. And then the biggest thing in the piece to me that I think, a lot of us have to push on is action, right? It's the speaking up, it's the supporting. And so let's talk about allyship for a minute here. If each of you want to kind of talk about your thoughts around what it means to be an ally, and then maybe how to attract and retain those allies in the organization, how to get them involved, and how to start that process. And Jamie, do we want to start with you?
Sure, absolutely. I love the 3 A's that you said. And that last one, that action one, you're absolutely right, Josh, is so important. And so, I think we've all seen folks that, maybe just will put a flag up, but are they actually doing anything? They might put a Black Lives Matter flag up or a Pride flag up, but are they doing something for that community? And so to me, allyship is being able to step in when those folks are not there and stand up for those folks. And so again, you yourself do not personally identify. So for me, I do not identify as a member of the LGBTQ plus community. However, I have several friends, several colleagues who do. And to me, I very much consider myself an ally. And so I will make sure to stand up and say something when, maybe someone's saying something that's not right. Someone's saying something that's, a bit off. And so just saying things and stopping things, and it can be as simple as saying to someone, what do you mean by that? And that usually gets folks thinking and realizing, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But also to open up doors for people and to open up doors for others that, may not be in the rooms that you're in. And so to me, that action piece is so critical to allyship. And I do think that, having allies in ERGs is really, really important, because we don't make progress, we don't move forward unless we have those allies here. And so even, with one of our client organizations, we had the executive sponsor, and it was for their Pride ERG. And he himself was not a member of the LGBTQ plus community, but his brother was, and he really considered himself an ally. So he was a great ally for that group and was able to make good connections and mentor the folks in that group. And so, at all levels, it's really important to have those allies. But Ellen, I'll turn it over to you.
I think for ally to me is similar to a lot of what Jamie said. It's more than just a word. It is an action. It's an action word. It's instead of a noun, should pretty much should be a verb, because a lot of times I think for me it's showing up, being there, and in spite of I'm there and I see that person there. They don't have to make a big show of, oh, here I am. I'm on the bandwagon. I'm joining in. Sometimes it's just that person that says, hey, what do you need? Can I go help you hang the flag? Or can I go get lunch? Can I do this? Sometimes it's just that person that is just there as an ear. But then on the opposite side of it, I think that a lot of times people are willing to step up or step down from being allies, because a lot of times they say, oh, if I support this, and I don't see it as much in the groups that are related to like the women, the gender, or related to the culture. But with the LGBTQ plus group, a lot of times I think that's where sometimes people are a little skittish about allyship, is because a lot of times they may have friends that identify, or they may know people that identify as part of the community, but sometimes they're afraid of what people would think if they were an ally to the community. So I think that's where it creates a little bit of fear. So for people that are more allies of the LGBTQ plus community, to me, that is a high level of action, because a lot of times those people face a lot more scrutiny than they do for being supporters of the gender equality or the racial equality groups, because those people are really strong allies and they're really strong friends to the community, because they're the ones that are willing to, in spite of, step up and say, hey, you don't say that, or these terms might not be nice, or you know what, I'm going just to show you that I support you. So I think a lot of times an ally should be more so of an action word. That's just my 2 cents worth.
I think it's spot on. I think it's spot on. And two things that stuck out to me from both your answers there. One, Jamie, you were talking about, you know, everybody, someone might have a brother, right, who identifies in that group. People can get involved and people can feel like they support for any variety of reasons. I think a lot of time we sometimes it starts and stops with gender and race, right? And it's like, well, how can they be an ally to this group? Why would they support this group? But there's so much. I think we all have to keep in mind there's so much more, for those reasons that we listed earlier that we were going to cover today, that people can connect on and connect with and feel a part of, outside of it just being the right thing to do, right? To support one another and love one another. And then Ellen, you know, when you were talking about, you kind of left it on a cliff here at the end. I was gonna button up, but it's not just the executives. So can the both of you talk about engaging allies at not just the executive level, right? Because that one is the target you do need. You do need the executive support, and all the DEI calls we've had for NCBIO, the common theme has been you got to get executive buy-in, you got to get an executive support, starts top down. But these are groups that are started by the employees, right? And my thought is that you would need allies from all levels. So can you, either of you, talk about ways potentially that the audience here could go about and finding those allies, recruiting those allies, and supporting at more than just the executive level as well? If any tips and tricks that you've learned, things that have worked, things that didn't work.
A lot of times, the thing that I found that worked is a lot of times people are willing to support their friends. They're willing to be an ally if it's someone they can identify with and it's someone that they know. So one thing that I do, and I also encourage other resource group leaders and members of resource groups, just go sit down and have lunch with somebody or just sit down and talk with somebody, and not even about DE&I. Just get to know them on just a general basis. Because what happens is it's one of those things where I always like to say this: one can chase 1,000 and two can put 10,000 a flight. A lot of times we support events and we support initiatives just because it's our friend or someone that we know that is having that event, or it's some or that whatever initiative. So if you show yourself friendly, he that hath friends must first show himself friendly. So if if you show yourself friendly and you show that I'm in this not because I want to be seen, but I have a heart that's in this. You show people your heart and you show them that you really want this to work, or I want to have this. A lot of times people will come just because it's you. And guess what? Your haters are going to come too because your haters want to see you fail. So they're going to come to the event just because they want it to fail. But when they get there and they get surprised because, oh, this event is going off great. This talk that we're having or this touch point is going great. You know what? They might be on to something. I don't like them and I want it to fail, but I'm going to go back because the next time it just might fail. And what they don't realize is that they keep coming, and then their friends see them coming, and their colleagues see them coming. And before you know it, your group has expanded. And now they're like, you know what? This actually is working. What can I do to help? So that's how you get the growth, because even the people that don't want to do it, they want to come just to see it fail. But that's when, if you set the mark that I'm going to reach this person, because if I reach them, they're going to bring their friends, and then it grows. So first, you have to put yourself out there, and you just have to get to know your colleagues, and don't make it about DE&I. Make it personal.
It's hard to top that, Ellen, with your quoting and amazing things to say. So I don't have much to add. I think from a more tactical perspective, completely agree with, hey, if you have a friend, something like that, bring them along. But I think from a technical perspective, I already talked about make sure that your ERGs are introduced in your new employee hiring. That's really important so that they know they exist, they know how they can get involved. And then you can also do, we've seen some clients do surveys where they'll just send things out and say, hey, what would you be interested in learning more about or participating in? Would you be interested in maybe, joining or highlighting your own story? And that way you get this sort of group of folks that they may not be ready to join an ERG right now, but maybe in the future they are. And then I would say the other thing is think about different really great team meetings and things where you can spotlight those ERGs so that, again, people know that they exist and that allies are very much welcome. And so those are just a few very tactical things, because I can't top what you were saying, Ellen. So stick to the tactics.
So one thing that I didn't want to that I missed if we didn't address on the call is we talked about fear, right? And there's a lot of fear surrounding this. And Jamie, one thing you brought up in our prep call that I was hoping you could shed some light on for everybody was something called replacement theory, and how individuals might be a little bit reluctant to support an ERG for fear of replacement. So could you talk to the audience about that?
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing that up, Josh. I was like, what did I say on the panelist prep call? That was a few weeks ago now. But yeah, I do think that, and I've seen this and I've experienced this a lot of, well, we don't want to help them because then they're going to come and take our jobs, or they're going to get moved up faster in the company. That's really not what DEI is about. That's not what ERGs are about. It is about providing a space so that everyone can succeed. So if you have someone who's neurodivergent, wouldn't you want to create a space where we can enable closed captioning so that they can follow along a little bit better? That seems like an easy thing to do. If someone uses a wheelchair, wouldn't you provide an elevator so they can get up to the office? So all of these different things, we're not giving them an extra, leg up. We're giving them what they need to be their most successful selves at the organization. So it's not this replacement theory. I'm always the big fan of here. I'll use a quote now, Ellen, but a rising tide raises all ships. But it's true. If everyone feels better and feels that they can be themselves, they're going to be more productive. They're going to be better teammates. And so that is, what I would say in terms of that replacement theory. But it's true. And it's that fear, and it's a real thing. And so I think going back to what Ellen said, being able to talk to people, on that personal basis is really, really critical to help folks get past that and realize, oh, I didn't know. And sometimes it takes years to get people to maybe move past that. But, it's worth it, and it's important to keep doing. So that's what I would say for that.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple minutes left, so let's do this. Let's put some things into action, or give some folks some homework, since that's what they came for, right? Yom Kippur is coming up for those that weren't looking at the calendar. And then, as we talked about earlier, Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up. Ellen and Jamie, if you two could just shed any kind of tips, tricks, maybe you've already said them, but you want to repeat them on the call. When we all exit here and we go back and we're furthering our organization on this journey, what are some things that we could do that are just easy starting points?
I'll start. One of the things that I see is a lot of times outside of the great replacement, you also have fatigue. A lot of times people are just tired. They don't want to hear, oh gosh, here we go again. They're celebrating. So one of the things that I think, and I'm a firm believer in this, the things that you can do something really simple like food. And maybe not for Yom Kippur, but for Latino Hispanic Heritage Month, find a catering or a food or something. Have some music. We're bringing in, we have an employee here. Her mom teaches Latin dance. She's going to come and do an afternoon Latin dance party. Find the things that you can find things out there, because a lot of times what employers want to say is, we just don't have the budget for this. But you can find things out there where people are just coming to do it for free. And people might say, I know somebody that can come do it. But those are the things, if you just start small, just start with one thing. For Asian American and Pacific Islanders Month, we just bought in boba tea for the day. We bought in some boba tea from a local vendor, and everybody was just like, oh wow. Then they wanted to know a little bit more. But if you just find something small, just one thing, it doesn't have to be really big, but sometimes just that small spark can start a big fire. So just find something that's just small, and just to show that you identify and that you're recognizing that they deserve to be celebrated.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that, Ellen. And the thing I would add to it, and going back to what you were saying, Josh, earlier about your 3A's, the first one, that awareness, just learn, be able to open yourself up to different perspectives, be able to learn about different cultures and different experiences. I'm going to put into the chat, and we'll send this in a follow-up email as well. But we have some free resources. So again, Ellen, you're exactly right. Well, we don't budget for this. Well, we're giving this away to you all. So go check it out. We not only have an ERG toolkit, but also we talked a lot today about active allyship. And there's a guidebook on that. And so I would encourage everyone who's on the call today, please do check those out and start to put it into practice. Exactly as you said, Josh, not only is it Yom Kippur, it's Rosh Hashanah later this week. Those are 2 Jewish high holidays. Just even thinking about when you're scheduling meetings with colleagues, maybe look at different times to schedule those meetings to be more inclusive of your colleagues who are celebrating. So small things like that can really go a long way, and there's no action that is too little. Now, of course, there is a lot that we know we all need to do, and there's a lot of work to be done, but it really does start with the small, the small action. And going back to what you said, Ellen, if you get one person doing it, but it's much better if you get 2. So bring folks into it, share these resources with folks, and be able to move, help us all move forward together.
Awesome. So many quotes today, so many tips and tricks. I think at this point, we are going to go into our breakout room.